We've made it to part 4 of Richard No's arguments. We've looked at why we should expect to eventually build a super intelligent AI, AGI. We've looked at why we should expect that super intelligent AGI to be agentic and to pursue large-scale goals. We've also looked at why, without a concerted effort to prevent it, we should expect those goals to be at cross purposes with our own. And now we're going to look at why we should expect the AGI with these different goals than ours, why we should expect that AGI to be successful at taking control of the future from humanity. You might be asking yourself, well, why do we even need this fourth part of the argument? Why do we need to go into it in depth? It seems pretty intuitive that given those first 3 parts, if you've got an AGI, if you've got a super intelligent AGI with goals that are different than humans, what's to prevent it from totally dominating us? Introducing an AGI in the modern day is somewhat analogous to dropping a modern day human in the Stone Age. And it's much less intuitive, right? When you think about it, if you've got one modern day human in the Stone Age, it doesn't seem plausible that that person would be able to take over the entire world. So what's different qualitatively about AGIs that would allow them to do that? In this video, I'm going to go over a few disaster scenarios. What might it look like if we fail to align AGI? And then factors that influence our chances of surviving. So let's look at some disaster scenarios. So what happens if we fail to solve the alignment problem? Bostrom's scenario goes somewhat like this. We develop a single AGI, and this AGI develops a goal that's misaligned with the goals of humanity. We fail to solve the alignment problem. We end up with a misaligned AGI. The AGI acts as if it's aligned long enough to pursue instrumental sub-goals like power and resource acquisition, right? Gaining power, gaining resources, make it more likely for it to achieve its goal, really no matter what its goal is. Once it's more powerful than humanity, once it's gained enough power and resources, it suddenly has no incentive to act like it's aligned anymore, and it reveals its hand. It takes it what Bostrom calls a treacherous turn, and it takes over the world. So this is Bostrom's picture of a disaster scenario. Paul Christiano, who's another top-notch AGI safety researcher, it says, well, the stereotyped image of AI catastrophe is a powerful, malicious AI system that takes its creators by surprise, a treacherous turn, and quickly achieves a decisive advantage over the rest of humanity. And he says, yeah, I'm not so sure that that's what disaster is going to look like. And he paints a different picture. In this scenario, humans succumb to the pressures to give AIs goals that are easy to measure. They're going to be pressures to give AGIs goals that are easy to measure versus hard to measure. So just a few examples. Giving the AGI the goal to reduce someone's feeling of uncertainty versus increasing someone's knowledge about the world, right? The second one is a much more difficult goal to measure. It's much harder to accomplish, okay? And people are going to be, in Christiano's view, tempted to give the AGI this easier to measure, easier to fulfill goal, reducing feelings of uncertainty, okay? Improving reported life satisfaction versus actually helping me live a good life. Christiano believes that societal decisions will, over time, come to be heavily informed by AI systems with easy to measure goals. Legislation might be optimized to seem like it's addressing real problems and helping constituents, but eventually that will be achieved by undermining our ability to actually perceive problems and constructing increasingly convincing narratives about the world is going, about where the world is going and what's important. So those are a couple of different disaster scenarios that may arise if we fail to solve the alignment problem. What are some of the factors that are going to increase or decrease our chances of survival? No picks 4 of these in particular: takeoff speeds, how interpretable our AI systems are, our ability to put constraints on those AI systems, and political coordination. So first, takeoff speed. But the idea here is, how much time will it take to go from human level AGI to super intelligent AGI? Is it going to be on the order of decades, years, months, days? What is it going to be? What's that transition period from once we get human level AGI? How fast is it going to take to improve to super intelligent? This is a hotly debated topic. On the one hand, AlphaGo, it went from mediocre to the best in the world very, very quickly. Evolution took us humans from chimp level intelligence to super chimp level relatively quickly in terms of evolutionary time. And The main driver of that improvement in our intelligence over chimps' level of intelligence was our brain's hardware. Analogous hardware advances can be made in AIs much, much faster than it took evolution to improve the hardware of our brains. And we've already talked about it, recursive improvements, where we'll get to a certain point where AIs are the ones who are doing AI research, right? So you could imagine if we have a human level AI doing AI research, AGI doing AI research, it could develop a superhuman AGI, and the effects compound very, very quickly so that we get superintelligence quickly, right? On the other hand, the historical record shows that technological progress is pretty continuous and that computing resources grow continuously as well. Many see this computing resources as one of the main drivers of progress in AI, okay? So there are a lot of factors here at when you think about takeoff speeds and a lot of disagreement, but this is one of the factors that will really influence our ability to meet disaster scenarios and to respond effectively to them. If the takeoff speed is slow, that gives us more time to react. If it's very, very quick, that gives humanity much less time to react. How transparent are AI systems? The idea of transparency is, can we take a particular part of a neural network and say, okay, this neuron or this group of neurons and weights is responsible for detecting hooves of horses, right? If we're talking about, cats, dogs, chickens, and horses, how do we go about figuring out, going from like a totally, non-transparent black box of a neural network to, oh yeah, this part does this, this does this, this does this, this does this. If we could get really good at interpreting what neural networks are doing, then we might be able to say, oh, this AGI is thinking about this and stay one step ahead of it, right? And Chris Olah and his team work on transparency, also known as interpretability of AI systems. I strongly encourage you to read these articles that talk about interpretability of image classifying neural networks. And for the more technically minded, I would strongly encourage you to read Anthropic's A Mathematical Framework for Transformer Circuits. All right, constraints on AI systems. So let's go back to one of the things that we talked about at the very beginning of the video. Why is it unlikely for a human who's dropped in the Stone Age to be able to take over the world? The human is squishy, right? It's confined to one particular piece of hardware. Why will AGIs not face those same hurdles? AIs are programs. And once an AI has access to the internet, it can copy itself thousands of times. And the idea here is, if we can place constraints on AGIs, right, make them unable to copy themselves, not give them access to the internet, keep them confined to very secure computer systems. This is another dimension that will influence our ability to survive disaster scenarios. The fourth factor influencing our ability to survive misaligned AGI is human political coordination. But we don't have a very good track record on climate change, and climate change is a much more well-documented problem than AGI safety, and we have not done well in that. And there are also going to be incentives for people to bypass safety measures, economic incentives, social incentives to bypass safety measures. To conclude this series, there's a lot of uncertainty in all four parts of No's argument, right? That he's by no means extremely confident in all four of these pillars of his arguments. But even so, the stakes of introducing something that's more intelligent than humans into the world are extremely high. Okay, the transformative effects of AGI is going to be immense. And if this transformative AGI is misaligned with human values, the stakes are so high that it makes sense to spend a lot of time digging into these arguments, preventing potential disasters. Thank you very much. Check the description for links to the articles mentioned in this video.